You're standing in a dense forest. You are incredibly hungry. Your eyes lock onto a mysterious bush covered in bright, inviting red berries that look perfectly ripe. You reach out your hand. But how do you know they will not kill you? Today, the answer is remarkably simple. You just pull out your phone. Modern humans rely on detailed labels, quick internet searches, and strict safety regulations to keep deadly poison off their dinner plates. You never have to guess. Why would you ever risk eating something completely unknown? Turned for most of human history, there was no safety net. The ancient world was a vast mystery. Your early ancestors stepped out onto the endless plains and into the dark forests, completely blind to the hidden dangers around them. They had to eat. How did they navigate this botanical minefield without dying? The real answer is far stranger. It is not just about blind luck. Your ancient survival actually involved a complex web of evolutionary biology, intense observation, and brutal human sacrifice. The natural world seems quiet. But did you know it is actually an endless silent war zone? Plants desperately want to survive. They simply cannot run away. Since they are rooted firmly to the ground, they have spent millions of years developing invisible chemical weapons to aggressively defend themselves from hungry predators. They wage silent chemical warfare. Have you ever wondered why some green leaves are completely untouched by insects? These plants are packed with neurotoxins. They actively produce defensive alkaloids. These natural chemicals are specifically designed by brutal evolution to destroy your liver, shut down your kidneys, or stop your heart entirely. They wrap their seeds in poison. How did early humanity ever make it out of the terrifying woods alive? It started with a biological alarm system. You carry this exact system today. It lives right on your tongue and serves as the very first line of defense against the silent assassins of the plant kingdom. You think taste is just for pleasure. Why do you violently reject certain intensely bitter flavors? Dr. Timothy Johns spent years pioneering chemical ecology. He studied early human diets. He discovered that ancient foragers relied heavily on sensory cues that were hardwired directly into their biology to safely navigate the lethal landscape. The most important cue is bitterness. What exactly happens when you bite into a raw, incredibly bitter leaf? Your face instantly contorts in disgust. You instinctively spit it out. This rapid physical reaction is not just you being a picky eater, but rather an ancient prehistoric reflex designed to immediately save your life. Alkaloids always taste intensely bitter. Did you know your brain is strictly programmed to interpret bitter as pure danger? Your brain registers that harsh flavor. It screams at you to stop. You actually have thousands of specialized taste buds dedicated exclusively to detecting these subtle chemical warning signs hidden secretly inside your daily food. They are not there for enjoyment. But what happens when the deadly poison successfully hides itself from your tongue? Bitter taste is not a perfect system. Many perfectly safe plants taste bitter. Some of the most incredibly toxic plants on planet Earth do not actually taste like much of anything at all to a human. Relying purely on taste was foolish. How did your desperate ancestors fill in these dangerous, life-threatening gaps? So they became the ultimate environmental watchers. They looked constantly to the animals. You might naturally assume that watching a small bird eat a wild berry means that specific berry is completely safe for you to consume. This is a massive, deadly misconception. Why can birds safely eat things that would drop a grown human in seconds? Birds possess completely different digestive enzymes. They process toxic chemicals uniquely. Watching birds flutter around the forest was essentially useless and because they neutralize powerful poisons in ways that mammals simply cannot ever replicate. Your ancestors watched their closest relatives instead. When did you last pay extremely close attention to a wild monkey? Primatologist Kenneth Glander spent decades observing wild primates. He carefully tracked their eating habits. He noticed something truly fascinating about how wild monkeys selectively choose their daily food sources high up in the dense competitive jungle canopy. They do not eat random leaves. How did their strange daily feeding schedules shape the course of early human history? Monkeys eat specific plants at specific times. They wait for the toxin levels to drop. Your early ancestors watched the monkeys carefully, noticing these intricate daily patterns and perfectly copying them to safely forage for themselves in the wild. They successfully outsourced their risk assessment. But what happened when an entirely new, completely untested plant was suddenly discovered? This is where ancient survival becomes truly terrifying. It required immense, heroic sacrifice. Someone had to bravely step up and take a tiny nibble of the unknown plant while the rest of the hungry tribe watched. They sat back and waited nervously. Did their stomachs suddenly begin to cramp in unbearable agony? Perhaps they started sweating profusely. Maybe they started gasping for air. If absolutely nothing happened after several long hours, the brave human tester would take a slightly larger bite and wait all over again in total silence. This was an agonizingly slow process. How many ancient humans died just so you could know a simple tomato is safe? The early casualties were incredibly massive, but their brutal sacrifices were never forgotten. The vital knowledge of what ultimately killed the brave dietary tester was passed down through countless generations as the very foundation of all cultural knowledge. They strictly remembered every single lethal mistake. What did they actually do when someone accidentally ate the wrong poisonous thing? They had a secret biological backup plan. It sounds entirely bizarre today. When they desperately suspected a wild plant was mildly toxic, they immediately reached down to the ground and ate large handfuls of raw dirt. You think eating soil is completely strange? Why would fully grown ancient adults intentionally swallow wet earth and thick clay? Anthropologist Sarah Young extensively researched this bizarre phenomenon. It is an ancient practice called geophagy. She discovered that early humans globally consumed specific types of dense clay precisely when they were eating potentially toxic or incredibly dangerous wild plants. The clay acts like a natural biological sponge. Did you ever know that regular dirt could actively save your life? The microscopic clay particles instantly bind to the plant toxins. This happens directly inside your stomach. They effectively trap the dangerous chemical poisons before they can fully cross the intestinal wall and lethally enter your vulnerable, pumping bloodstream. Tony, your ancestors essentially biohacked the deadly poison. But what was the final, truly massive leap forward in early human dietary history? They successfully discovered how to aggressively control fire. The sudden invention of cooking changed everything. Intense heat acts as a wildly powerful chemical disruptor that rapidly breaks down complex toxins and completely neutralizes dangerous defensive plant alkaloids forever. Cooking completely unlocked a brand new world. How many deadly, untouchable plants suddenly became an everyday, highly nutritious dinner? Ancient humans learned to soak and ferment. They transformed poisonous roots entirely. They actively turned incredibly toxic tubers into vital staple crops that could safely feed entire growing tribes during long, brutal periods of intense winter famine. Cassava is a perfect historical example of this. Would you ever intentionally eat a rugged plant that naturally produces highly lethal cyanide? Eaten completely raw, cassava is densely packed with cyanide. It is an incredibly deadly root. Through a complex multi-day process of intense grating, long soaking and heavy roasting, ancient human foragers successfully stripped the fatal cyanide entirely away and made it completely safe. They ruthlessly conquered the entire plant kingdom. How did they successfully turn pure poison into the ultimate source of human power? They genetically engineered their wild food. They deliberately removed the invisible chemical threats. Today, you never worry about deadly cyanide hiding in your salad as you casually wander through massive, brightly lit modern supermarkets without a single second thought. You happily buy perfectly safe, mass-produced vegetables. Do you ever stop to deeply think about the ancient bloody battle for human survival? Your modern human body has never truly forgotten. It intimately remembers the terrifying ancient forest. That sudden physical aversion you sharply feel to a bitter piece of dark ale is the invisible ghost of your ancestors whispering directly into your ear. They are still standing strict, silent guard. Are you finally ready to truly appreciate everything on your dinner plate? The next time you walk confidently through a dense forest, look very closely. Admire the bright, inviting red berries hanging silently. Remember the thousands of violently lost lives and the sheer evolutionary brilliance it actively took to map this invisible, ancient botanical minefield specifically for you. You are never really alone in the dark woods. When you finally reach out your bare hand, do you remember that you are standing in a dense forest?